It's now my pleasure to introduce a colleague and a friend, Ted Mitchell. Ted is president and CEO of the New Schools Venture Fund and the immediate past president of the California State Board of Education. He also served as chair of the Governor's Committee on Education Excellence and the Commission on Teacher Effectiveness for the Los Angeles Unified School District, and as chair of the excuse me, that's not right, but took the advice of the Standards Commission that decided on adoption of California's the Common Core state standards in California. Prior to coming to New Schools Venture Fund, Ted was president of Occidental College, vice chancellor and dean of the School of Education and Information Sciences at UCLA, and professor and chair of the Department of Education at Dartmouth College. Ted received his bachelor's degree, his master's degree, and his doctoral degree from Stanford University, one more thing that Stanford controls, and another reason to give thanks to Stanford today. And with that, I'm happy to introduce Ted Mitchell.
That means that I have to pay my alumni dues 3 times when I walk through the doors of the Arriaga Center. Thanks, David, and thanks, Mohammed. And it's been great for New Schools to be able to participate with the Silicon Valley Education Foundation and with PACE in helping to organize this. We've been the junior partner in this by a long distance, but we're very, very delighted to be a partner and really happy to see so many of you here. It's great that so many classroom teachers could be with us today, because I think that too often reform is seen as something that's done to teachers by a bunch of talking heads. And I think that one of the things and one of the themes that I hope will permeate today's conversation is that in order to solve the middle school math problem that we have, we need to reverse that. And this needs to be about creating and disseminating tools that can help teachers do the work that you do every day. So I'd like to talk a little bit this morning to set the stage rather broadly. We'll hear a lot in coming presentations about the specifics of the challenge that we face and the specifics of some of the tools that we might be able to deploy against those challenges. And I have to say that in looking at the lineup of organizations that we'll have a chance to interact with today, we'll be looking at really some of the cream of the crop of education technology tools that can serve kids and, as I mentioned before, serve teachers. So my view is not going to be at a granular level, but I'm going to try to take a bit of a broader perspective on what we're doing here today. And how we can indeed walk out of this room today with a great deal of enthusiasm and some working plans. So speaking of working, what do you know? So we have 2 interlocking problems that I think we're trying to solve today. One is that we know that across the U.S., in the gross aggregate terms, we're underperforming our own expectations and other nations' achievements in mathematics. Continuing mid-range rankings in the PISA scores are frustrating to us, and that's part of what we're here to talk about today. But we're also here to talk about a problem that's embedded in that in the U.S., and that's a persistent achievement gap. And it's a persistent achievement gap that shows up in mathematics. It's accelerated by changes between those who have and those who don't in the middle grades. And so I hope that as we go through our conversation today, we're able to keep both of these issues in focus. One, an overall challenge to improve mathematics instruction and mathematics proficiency in the U.S., and 2, the ability to carve back on this achievement gap so that we really are able to look Mayor Booker, also 3 Stanford degrees, Mayor Booker in the face and say, no, Corey, we are not any longer two nations. If we were to look at the fulcrum of Esmeralda's experiences, as Mohammed pointed out, there is a moment in time in which we, especially in California, but across the nation, where we really do separate out those kids who are on a path to college, and importantly to college success, and those who aren't. Those are the middle years, and no surprise to any of us who've been involved in California education for a long time, the pointy end of the fulcrum is algebra. It's access to algebra, it's success in algebra, and importantly, it is the path to that pointy part of the fulcrum, the persistent decline in mathematics performance among kids in the last couple of years of elementary school. This is a graph that shows the distribution of ninth grade course taking. And for those of us, and I think it includes the majority of people in the room, we know that we need to, with the exception of the no math course taken, we need to move those bars to the right in order to address both of the needs that I was talking about, the ordinal problem with the U.S.'s performance in mathematics and the persistent achievement gap interior to it. Our colleague Russell and Ali, who moved from EdTrust West to the Federal Department of Education, has really been my guidepost in the work that we've done in education policy and also the work that we do at New Schools in terms of investing in promising education innovations. And that is that we really have to come at this not just with a technocratic approach, but with a sense of moral purpose and a sense that we really do come as educators to the problem of, in this case today, middle school mathematics, with a sense of moral purpose and possibility. I don't like that slide anymore. I like this one. I like this one better. So, like David, I'm willing to stand and say that this is a different moment, and that we can make headway on these issues, and the technology can play an important role and a different role than it's played before. And I think, like David, I owe you my explanation for why I think that that's so. And I've got that's the shorthand version of it. But I think that we are at a moment where a couple of different paths are converging. One is that I think that the technology itself, the computing power that David pointed out, is growing at such a level that we are now able to do things that we simply couldn't do before. And I'll point to one. We'll come back to it in a couple panels. But our ability to gather and analyze data in very close to real time makes today's teaching technology tools not only adaptive to different students' learning styles and different students' ability levels, but it makes those tools powerful periscopes for teachers into the developmental and intellectual developmental lives of their kids. To be able to put those tools in teachers' hands is, I think, one of the things that makes today different. Second, in addition to being powerful, we've always had powerful computers, it's the ubiquity of those tools. How many of you have more than one device on your person or in your bag that can connect to the internet? How many of you have more than two? How many of you have more than three? How many of you only have one? How many of you have none? Congratulations! The door prize for each of you, just kidding. Yeah, is an iPad 2. It will be available in your favorite color outside, courtesy of the Stanford Alumni Association. Over 3/4 of high school kids, and I know that's not specifically germane to our topic today, but over 3/4 of high school kids have access to one or more devices that connects to the internet. Those are typically smartphones, and we have some mobile technology development that can continue to be done. But the point is still the same, that technology is becoming, and powerful networked technology is becoming a ubiquitous part of our students' lives and a ubiquitous part of our lives. Third, I think that we are seeing a generational shift in the teaching corps that is bringing into teaching people who are half my age and at least twice as competent with any technology tool as I am. And that's changing what is the basis from which teachers work to absorb new information, to develop their own expertise in social networked collaboration with others across time and distance, and the way that teachers think about delivering instruction to their kids. 4, I think, remarkably for an age in which policy has been so fraught, the introduction of the Common Core creates a number of important opportunities for us. One, and one that we've talked a lot about on the technology side, is that it creates a new national market for the creation and development of technology tools. It means the development costs for state-of-the-art math programs for 7th graders can be amortized across 42 states, and they don't need to be customized necessarily for each of the 50 states. That's important. But what I think is even more important is the opportunity in the Common Core, and a couple of us were talking about this morning before we started. It's the opportunity in the Common Core to re-engage teachers, but also parents and administrators, but teachers primarily, in the redeliberation of curriculum, of what it means to know and to be able to do middle school mathematics. And that's an opportunity. It's not a fact. And in California and in Nebraska and elsewhere across the country, it will take the diligent effort of policymakers and administrators to make those conversations real. A few of us had a discussion about that last night, talking about how best to do that in California. But I think it is a moment of real difference when we, not only as a school or a district or even a state, have the opportunity to talk about what it means to help kids live a more robust, deeper, more intellectually challenging set of standards than we've ever had before. And that's an opportunity that we shouldn't miss. In addition, and here's where this slide you've been looking at for the last 4 minutes comes into play. In addition, I think that there are a couple of things that are somewhat related to all of what I've said, but in part also not. It is that there is an amazing energy around the development of education technology. And we are at the epicenter, physically, of that roiling market for education technology tools right here. And it's got its own dynamic. It's a dynamic of terrifically skilled engineers who've been working in big data, in personalization, in social networks, in thin client implementation, who now sort of say, it might be my turn to give back. And how can I take these ideas that I've worked on and where I've been successful and where they have changed other areas of society and other industries, and how can I start to do work in education that will achieve the same kinds of change? At New Schools, we're now getting between 5 and 10 new business plans a week of ideas generated by engineers who want to help educators tackle the problems that we face every day, and that's tremendously encouraging. And let's face it, in California, more than almost anywhere else in the country, our budget cuts have eviscerated the teaching staff of most schools. They have increased class sizes. They have made it much more difficult for teachers to respond to the individual needs of kids. RTI, RTI squared, RTI cubed, RTI to the 4th power. You know, there are plenty of ways in which every day educators are working as hard as they can with the tools that they have to achieve the same or greater outcomes for more and more diverse kids. They need relief. They need help. And the tools that we're going to talk about today offer part of the solution. So what does the solution look like? There is this riff that, part of a trope that education reformers use, that if Rip Van Winkle were to wake up today, what happens? He would recognize that schools look exactly like they did when he fell asleep. It's a little different. We've done away with the ornate ironwork. Fashions come and go. This may be the next one. Whiteboard, blackboard, and I think there's a stove over in this corner that you can't quite see. We've known for a century that all kids come to school with different learning styles, with different experiences, with different family backgrounds, with different amounts of food in their stomach, and yet we have sustained an industrial style production process for education. And we're really now being forced to come to terms with that. On the positive side, we know that we can and should equip kids differently, aiming at the same high standards. On the downside, we know, especially in California, that this industrial model simply doesn't work. It doesn't work for kids, it doesn't work for teachers. And the technology tools that we'll talk about today are able to get beyond that wall and to personalize learning in powerful ways that they never have before. To adapt to where kids are, to present them with the appropriate next challenge, to present them with the appropriate next prompt, and as I said at the beginning, to provide teachers with ongoing feedback and real-time data about how their kids are doing, so that they, the teacher, can intervene personally, not on a guess, not on a whim, but on real, impactful data that says, Ted Mitchell, today, cannot multiply fractions to save his life. So how about heading over there and giving him a clue? So personalized learning offers much promise, and the technologies are absolutely essential to bringing personalized learning to fruition. I want to step back. I promised I would do top level. And so I just want to tell you what New Schools does. So New Schools is this odd thing. It's an intentionally not-for-profit venture capital company. We are a nonprofit organization. We aggregate philanthropic capital. We use it to help build startup organizations that are aiming at improving and transforming public education, particularly for underserved kids. This has brought us face-to-face with some of the most exciting education entrepreneurs in the country. We work nationwide and have been proud to do so for the last 12 years. When we think about education innovation, we think about it in two ways. I want to see what that is. And here are some of the organizations that we have been invested in over the last 2 years as we've begun to focus more on education technology. We think about education in two ways. One, we think about education innovation that is synergistic with the current system. And what we mean by that is curricular add-ons, supplemental services and programs, things that can be used after school, things that can be used at home, things that don't necessarily challenge what it is that school is and does, tools that help teachers. These would all be examples for us of synergistic kinds of innovations that can really help make the school system that we have more effective. What's great about those is that they really can be additive. So Grocket, for example, is a service that provides test preparation for students who are headed to college and among other things, need to prepare for the SAT. Carnegie Learning is a mathematics curriculum ad for schools. Teaching Channel is a service that offers teachers glimpses of how other teachers are doing their craft. These are all examples of synergistic reforms that we believe aid teachers in doing the work that they're called on to do now. What's tough about that, though, is that it doesn't really address the fundamental kind of transformation that David mentioned earlier. Transformation of not only what we expect of schools, but what school looks like, what it feels like, and what all of the people who go there every day do. And so there's a second set of innovations that we think about that challenge fundamentally what my advisors and mentors, David Tayak and Larry Cuban, call the grammar of schooling. That change the way we actively think about what a school is, what it looks like. And so some of the investments that we make are investments in organizations that are aiming to do just that. Khan Academy, Presence Learning, used to be called Presence Telecare. We were fortunate enough to help them change that name. And School of One. All of them are aiming to change the grammar of schooling and really fundamentally uproot the system. What's good about that is that it really pushes the technology in ways that even the technology ought to be pushed to change schools and change outcomes for kids and opportunities for teachers. What's hard is that those innovations rarely succeed. Think back to the Rip Van Winkle. There's a reason we still look at schools the same way we always have. And that reason is that the grammar of schooling, it just makes sense. And so to challenge that is to challenge some very fundamental beliefs. But we believe that to really pursue innovation, you have to do both at the same time. And so I want to talk very quickly about two of these organizations, and then I want to subside so that we can get to the business of talking about what this means at the next level down. How many of you have heard of School of One? Excellent. How many of you have heard of new classrooms? Great. So let me tell you that School of One has changed its name to New Classrooms, so now you have heard of both. So School of One, this may sound like an oxymoron to you, but School of One is an innovation that comes to us from the New York City Department of Education. Joel Rose, who worked for Joel Klein, has developed a software system that helps teachers understand on a daily basis kids' achievement in mathematics, and then programs their schedule for the following day to bring them up in areas where they need some remedial attention, provides challenges to them at the upper end, and does so, again, on a daily basis and on an individual basis. If you were to walk into a School of One school, you would see that a number of things have to be different for it to work. When you walk in, you see what looks like the departure board at O'Hare Airport. And instead of each flight, you have each kid. And next to each kid is where they go first, second, and third during their time at school. So you need to have this set up. You need to have the expectation for kids and parents that they don't have first period. What they have is a learning map. They go to school and they move to where the departure screen tells them that they need to go. And they do that throughout the day, and at the end of the day, indeed, another map is produced overnight by the algorithm, and the same thing happens the next day. In order to make School of One work, you have to have a very different school. You have to have a very different feel. You have to have a very different building. You have to have different kinds of teachers who are used to doing different kinds of work. This is an example of the kind of fundamental structural change that may be in the offing for us as we think about what technology can do for each kid. Literally, a school in which the curriculum is built on a daily basis and the instructional interventions are built on a daily basis for each individual kid. As you can see, a penetration of 1,500 kids does not mean that the world has changed, but I think that this is certainly an example worth looking at and worth thinking about. At the opposite extreme, Khan Academy. How many of you have heard of Khan Academy? Excellent. Khan Academy has not changed its name. So at the other end of the spectrum, you have Khan with, I really have to look twice every time, with 115 million lessons delivered on Khan Academy. And Khan is, at the first glimpse, a perfect example of the kind of synergistic innovation that I mentioned. How many of you who are educators are using or know of a fellow educator who's using Khan Academy either in a classroom or, yeah. So can you do that again? Okay, so that's great. So that's maybe, what do you think, David, 85 people? Khan is in 20 schools, formally. I have the privilege of serving on the board of Khan Academy, and we have 20 pilots going on. But we estimate that there are probably 4,000 schools that are using Khan in an informal way, and countless more teachers, and countless, well, maybe 115 million, more parents and families who are using Khan in this kind of synergistic way to provide a supplement to what's going on in the classroom. I will freely admit that our family is one of those. My family, however, just gets terrified whenever I come home from work because my kids, one of whom is in 7th grade and one of whom is in 5th grade, just can't wait to see what the 9 new websites are that they have to test out that afternoon. And I'm there with my notebook. Now! I need it now! Khan, however, has stuck and has become a part of the grammar of schooling in our household. But what makes Khan so able to be synergistic is that you can dive in, you can dive out, you can find point solutions, but you can also travel the path and earn badges and become engaged in moving through Sal Khan's version of what middle school mathematics ought to be like, and you can take a detour and learn about the financial crisis while you're there. So on the one hand, the numbers behind Khan Academy, as contrasted to the numbers behind School of One, do really illustrate the difference between sort of a synergistic innovation that can be layered on what we already do and a fundamental reform that just is big, heavy digging with power tools. But as we're learning with Khan, there is a point at which the synergistic or symbiotic innovation actually does begin to challenge the grammar of schooling. And so in the 20 pilots that we're doing, and Tim Ranzetta and I were talking about this before we started, the more teachers use Khan, the more they're challenged to change their relationship with kids, their relationship to curriculum, their relationship to assessment, and that is, I think, a conversation that is a powerful, powerful conversation that we need to have in California, to not just have the technology tools that we're talking about today layered on top of what we've got, but to really see if we can't use some of these synergistic innovations to drive the kinds of conversations that I think are now enabled by our move to Common Core, that are fueled by the ubiquity of technology, that are enhanced by the generational change of teachers in the classroom, and really at root are built on the base of giant computing power that we've never had before. I see those conversations happening. They're conversations with teachers about teaching. They're conversations with teachers about what their kids are genuinely learning. They're exciting conversations, and I think that they're the ones that are going to help us address the problem of middle school mathematics going forward. Thank you very much for your time.